Hey, welcome back to the Mr. Productivity Podcast. I have a tremendous guest on the show today. And instead of me introducing her, I'm going to let her, in her own words, tell you who she is. So, Tatiana, who in the world are you and why are you on the show?
Hey, Mark, great to be here. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm Tatiana Tsoir, and I am a visionary and award-winning accountant, author, and speaker. And I just love helping people pay less tax legally and build wealth through real estate. So we do quite a few things. We help businesses grow, scale, but also people become happier and just build better lives for themselves.
Happier. I love happier because happy people are productive people. And folks, if you heard the word accountant, numbers, and math, I know I have told you we don't do math on the show, and we're still not going to do math on the show. That's not why Tatiana's here. So I don't want people to get scared and go, oh, no, it's okay. She has got a great book that she so graciously sent to me. If you're watching on video on Spotify or YouTube, you can see the book, gorgeous title. I get so many books sent to me. I just started reading this book this morning. But I want to tell you, Tatiana, one of the things I highlighted already in the introduction, I really like this. I want to actually jump off here on the show. It's on page 2. You're talking about how you have so many of your friends and clients, while searching for that deep meaning in their lives and pursuing their passions, have felt tremendous anxiety about starting a new venture. It's a feeling like no other, and it begins the moment you say yes to yourself and your dream. If you give in to that anxiety, it steers you back to safety, and you end up never doing whatever your dream is. And I believe that we all have a default mode, and that default mode you just wrote in your book, it's safety. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I actually study a lot of psychology, human psychology. And the reason is that I really believe to my core that business is personal. People don't start businesses just for the sake of starting a business. People start businesses because we want to have a better life for ourselves and our loved ones. And so psychology has a lot to do with it. How do we bring our life's trauma and patterns into our business? And our brains are naturally, this is what I found out learning psychology and with research, our brain is naturally geared toward safety. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we don't want to get up and take a walk because our brain thinks, oh, just stay here. You're all good here. You're all safe. But it actually doesn't serve you. So similarly, when there's a challenge, our brain protecting ourselves, protecting our bodies, just basically steers us back to safety. And so we feel fear, we feel anxiety, we get anxious, we get worried, and we find reasons not to do it. And I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles, one of the biggest obstacles in starting a business today.
Now, you told me that you wanted to talk about financial productivity, and I will tell you, in over 1,300 episodes, I never had the word financial followed by productivity on the entire show. So you are making history today. But what you talk about in your book, the 20 or so pages I've read, is we all have these ideas, get in the business. Yeah, I'm going to have this business. I'm going to be this kind of coach or whatever. And we don't stop and think that it takes money to fund that. And so we get all excited. I'm going to create swag, and I'm going to create merch and coffee cups and coasters. And I'm going to create this website, and I'm going to create this podcast and YouTube channel. But we don't stop and think that there's something called the back office. And the back office is like the engine that runs your business, whether you're a solopreneur, if you're a small business owner, if you got a large company, it doesn't matter. When Jeff Bezos started Amazon eons ago, he still had a back office when he's just selling books. Now, I don't think people talk about this enough. They have these dreams, and you talk about it in the book, where people will tell you their dreams and they're all excited about it. You have the money for that? How are you going to pay your bills? And it dampens people's enthusiasm. But I think what you're doing is a good service, because if you don't think about that on the front end, their dream could come crashing down really quickly.
Absolutely. And it happens all the time. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says that I think 50% fail within 5 years. However, some experts say that 90% of businesses fail within 10 years. but it's never lower than 50. And so I think that I actually did a TEDx talk last year, and it was specifically on this topic where I talk about how entrepreneurship is a whole brain craft. It's a craft because it's something you can learn how to do and do well, but it requires whole brain. And I open the talk with saying that one of my great clients said to me once, accountants don't start businesses, honey. Visionaries do. Businesses don't start with accounting, but it follows right behind the vision. It's right there. And those who don't pay enough attention eventually fail or consistently live in this miserable chasing clients, chasing payments, chasing more work, more business, take on stuff that they don't want to do, take on miserable clients and clients that make them miserable. And to me, if you do this smart, and that's why the book is partially called Start Smart, right? The second part of the title. If you do this smart, you can get your dream, even if it's a bold dream. You just have to do this better and do it smart. And I'm a big fan of bootstrapping in the beginning because that's how you can get ahead. And so I wrote this book to give someone an opportunity to do this smarter, to do this better, so that they can bootstrap for the first whatever years or months, whatever their deal is, and come out better on the other side. Build a good business that actually allows them to build that life. There are so many books that talk about businesses or people starting a business thinking it's a business, like E-Myth, for example. He talks about most of the time technicians are starting a business. People, and in accounting, it's a great example. People who do tax returns well think, oh, okay, I'm going to do this for myself. But they never get out of that technician mindset. And so similarly, there are other books that talk about it, but it's not a business. And interestingly enough, accountants, lawyers, doctors, I don't know who else, call what they do a practice, not a business.
No, you're right. And I think when people look at me as a solopreneur, they're like, oh, you're so lucky. You're so lucky. And I'm like, what do you mean I'm lucky? I'm a big European football fan. We call it soccer in the States. And when my team plays during the week, like during the season, they'll play an afternoon game. Now, remember, I said Europe. So 8 o'clock over there is 2 o'clock in the afternoon over here. And I'll watch the game because it's on TV. And they're like, you're so lucky you get to watch that game. I was like, here's what you don't understand. I work 7 days a week and I get up at 4 in the morning. And so I work up until 2 o'clock. My quitting time's 4 o'clock. So it's not like I'm doing it in the middle of the day. But even if I was doing it in the middle of the day, I'm still working around the thing that brings me joy. It's not luck. I work on Saturdays and Sundays and holidays, not because so much I have to, but because I love what I'm doing. But people seem to think, and I certainly did when I got into business, oh my gosh, I'm the next Jeff Bezos, the next Elon Musk. Here comes all the money. It doesn't happen that way. You have got to show up on a regular basis, providing value. You just can't hang your shingle and go, ta-da, I'm a multimillionaire. I wish that happened, but sadly, it's not true.
I absolutely think you're, because everyone that I see, there's so many years behind their success. I used to think that, do you know who Amy Porterfield is? She's like the Digital Course Academy guru. So when I first bought her course, I absolutely was fascinated by her and just how she's been doing things. And I eventually did a launch of my course, which is a great course. And I did everything by the book. And it did get some traction, but not enough. It basically covered expenses and didn't leave me any profit, but at least it covered the expenses. And that's when I realized that even if I mimic what she's doing in my topic, whatever that is, she has had 13 years to perfect the process for one course. Mm-hmm. And Jeff Bezos did not become successful overnight. It took consistent effort, and that's what I believe in. However, I do think that you have to work smarter. There are people who, and I know quite a few of them, who are afraid to get their feet wet, are afraid to get into the nitty-gritty, are afraid to become the technician in their business, to understand the process. Sometimes they get stuck in being the technician. Sometimes they just don't want to be the technician. They just want to be a manager. Both of those strategies are wrong. Both of those strategies will result in not having a real good business, because when you are afraid to do the actual work. Like when you want to buy an accounting firm, for example, I use accounting firm purchases because that's just people talking to me about buying firms and it's a good time and whatever, blah, blah, blah. If you just want to buy an accounting firm, you have two options usually. You either dig right in, get your feet wet, start doing tax returns, understand what the process is, or you become the manager and hope that everybody else is going to do their job so that you can maintain the profit and pay down the loan that you've just got to buy the firm. And it's like that in every business. When you're buying a business, it's a little bit clearer line, right? Clearer kind of differentiator. But when you're starting a business, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds. And a lot of people talk about working on the business instead of in the business, but very few actually do that. Very few actually think strategically, look into the future, look for the potential. Sometimes it's not a bad thing. Sometimes you need to get through a year or two of the nitty-gritty to be able to see forest for the trees. But sometimes that moment never comes. And that's where there's a lot of solo professionals like lawyers, like accountants, like doctors who never see the potential beyond just their own service. A real business for a doctor would be having other providers see patients in their clinic and then make money off of supplements, off of other providers or whatever. Same thing with attorneys, same thing with accountants. That's a real business. But if you're one solo professional like that, you are the business. I don't even call it a business, honestly. But the idea is that in my book, I help take care of the nitty-gritty of the back office without having to become an accountant. That's not my goal at all. It's a plain English guide where I focus on giving you examples from my practice, my business, so that you could see what are the consequences and you could skip some of this trial and error time, if you will. And I hope I did a great job. We'll find out soon enough from you.
I like the words work smarter. So a couple weeks ago, I attended the boot camp and the coach didn't tell me what I'm going to tell you I did. It's what he was teaching. A thought popped in my head and I was on every social media platform. I thought it was Gary Vaynerchuk. I was on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, X or Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, everywhere. And then I realized as he was teaching, I'm like, have I ever got any leads from TikTok or Facebook or Instagram or X, Twitter or YouTube or Snapchat? No, I got them from LinkedIn. So again, working smarter. What I did is I decided to focus only on LinkedIn. Now I use X as that's like my non-business outlet, if you will. And I take the video podcast, I put that on YouTube, but that's all I do. I don't do any more short videos. I stay on LinkedIn because for me, that is working smarter. Because why would I want to keep trying to play the meta game or the TikTok game when I'm not getting any results from it? So I realized that's stupid. Even though I'm just repurposing content, it still takes time to put the content over there. Nobody's looking at it. No one's engaging with it. And so I realized, where are my people? And they're on LinkedIn. So I realized I have the podcast, I've got LinkedIn, and I got my newsletter. Those are the things I'm focusing on. I work with my wife, who, when I'm done with this podcast, she does all the editing. She'll post it on social media, all that stuff, because I'm not a podcast editor. That's not what I do. I like to think I'm gifted as creating content, and then she takes care of the rest. That's just a small example for anybody in any size business. Again, if you're a solopreneur, if you work for a big company, are you doing things that are working smarter, or are you doing things just because you've been told to do them or you've always done them? And I see this a lot with my clients. I'm like, okay, I get that. It's always been done. Does it have to be done? And I get this quizzical look on their face. They just look at me like, what do you mean? I'm like, just because it's always been done doesn't mean it needs to be done. That makes sense to you, doesn't it?
I'm laughing because, and I don't know if you'll like another example from the accounting industry, but I just recently launched a mentoring program for those in accounting, whether they work for themselves or for a firm. And this one woman was struggling because she was hired and she was provided no support. She was given, okay, here's the last year's tax return. Here's last year's work papers. Figure it out. And in accounting, there's something called Sally, SALY, same as last year. And we love Sally, not me, but most accountants love Sally. And it's just amazing how when I get new clients, sometimes I look at it and I go, okay, this is weird. Why is it done that way? And then the accountant's answers, oh, we've always done it that way. And it just happens all the time. And I don't understand. Yeah, we've always done it that way, but is it correct? It just blows my mind, honestly.
What does financial productivity mean to you?
I think it's such a great topic. But financial productivity to me means making revenue from sources that bring you joy most of the time and spending in such a way that you can cover your day-to-day life, the lifestyle you enjoy, invest in your future, and create a safety net. To me, it's making those things happen with the least amount of effort. Financial productivity is also knowing your numbers because there's power in that. I worked with a woman a number of years ago, and it's very fancy to be an actor or an actress in New York City. And this particular woman didn't go to an audition maybe for 5 years when I met her, but she still called herself an actress. And every day she would come to the office with Starbucks in her hand, lived in an apartment with 3 other roommates, and complained to never have money. That's not productive. And I think the core of the problem with financial unproductivity is not having a goal. Any goal, life goal, money goal, any goal. I think a lot of, especially younger generation, that's what I see in my nephews and just overall in people I talk to. And again, this is my observation, so it's by no means scientific, but I see that there's no goal. The goal is to live today. And I know a lot about that because I was born in the Soviet Union. There was no savings, because if you were saving, you could lose it all to inflation, like 1,000% inflation tomorrow. And a lot of people lost their money due to inflation. And so I understand that mindset of living today, but I think it's been taken to an extreme that is not very healthy. That's just my opinion.
I had a client once who actually, her words, not mine, changed her life because she had a lot going on. And the best way she could explain what I did were, remember those old Apple headphones, the corded ones? No matter how careful you were, they always got tangled up. No matter what you did, magically it was tangled up, and I untangled their headphones. What happened was her colleagues and her friends would see this change, and they put her like, wow, what a change. What happened? They go, oh, I hired Mr. Productivity and hired him as a coach and all this other stuff. And, oh, that's great. How much is it? And she told what my charge was at the time. And they, wow, that's a lot of money. I think at the time it was like $49 a month for my group coaching program. And they're like, $49 a month. Now, she's a CPA, and she'd say, wait a minute. I know you go to Starbucks 5 days a week. I know you go out to dinner movie at a nice restaurant twice every weekend. And she goes, what's your return on investment on that? You've seen the return on my investment through Coach Mark. Now, let's look at all your Starbucks, all your dinners out, all your movies. And they didn't want to talk to her about it because she had a good point. Now, this is not me saying it. This is her saying it to her colleagues. They saw the results. They wanted the results, but they're like, I'm not giving up my Starbucks. I'm not giving up dinner and a movie every week. You have to make a choice. And you mentioned goals. Okay, if you have a big, hairy, audacious goal, a nod to Jim Collins, it's going to take sacrifice to get there. And for what I see, a lot of people don't want to sacrifice. I want the goal, but I don't want to have pain. Mark Zuckerberg endured pain. Jeff Bezos endured pain. Steve Jobs endured pain. So what makes you think you're going to achieve your goals and not have to sacrifice anything?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's just so obvious to some of us. Not having a goal is part of the problem. And then not paying attention to what you spend is another huge problem. Nobody wants to know. Usually when you talk to someone about household spend or whatever, they say, oh, I'm not good at math. That's just like a get out of jail free card to not do anything and not get involved. And I think it's really bad because there are ways to do this. There's this meme, fairly well known, where there's 2 pictures of a boy at the blackboard writing down something with the chalk. And the top one says, the level of math people think accountants know. And it's like calculus 3, calculus 4, like all kinds of different complicated things. And then at the bottom, it says what we actually know. And it's 5 plus 1 is 6. There is power in simplicity. There's power in numbers. And we're not going to talk about numbers, but financial productivity comes down to how do you use resources, right? With regular productivity, life productivity, it's all about how to use the resource of time. With financial productivity, it's how do you use the resource of finance? That's why so many people, so many coaches and money experts talk about making money with money. You can't make money without investing. And if you are living paycheck to paycheck every week or every month, then how are you going to grow? Even if it's $50 a month, even if it's something small, put your money to work for you. There's Money Magazine, and we used to have a print subscription, and I would look at it and I would look for their, not advice, but more top funds to invest long term. And I would buy a little bit of those funds every time. And I found that to be efficient because when I need that money, I can always take it out. It's my financial safety net. But then think about it this way. And this is a trap that a lot of immigrants, first generation immigrants kind of face. And this is what I've seen. And I'm trying to change that with my nonprofit project. But the trap is they find a job, they keep working at it, they get tired, they hate the job, but they don't do anything to change it. So we all know this is not new. We invest either time or money. And I just recently read a book that talked about the difference in mindset with people who have a lot of money with people who don't. People who have a lot of money spend money to save time. People who have little money spend time to save money. And that's a different in mindset. And I think that's what I mean when I talk about financial productivity.
You mentioned earlier about knowing your numbers. And one of the things that I see people talk a lot about on social media or in person is a new app comes out, a new piece of technology comes out, and they're like, oh, this is going to solve all my problems. The most powerful question I like to ask people is, why do you need this? Because just because you can go buy this app, this technology, this piece of equipment, doesn't mean you should. Agreed?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this example because it reminds me of all of the subscriptions. And now there's a service that tracks your subscriptions and cancels them for you. Like, why do you subscribe to it to begin with? This monthly payment generation, I think, is a trap. We are looking at, okay, can we afford $150 a month? It's only $150 a month. And we're like, yeah. And then it's 10 times $150 a month. Okay, that's $1,500 a month. Not so much. And then we have some student loans. And then when we have some other things, and the snowball effect is for sure real. And I think that these companies with some creative methods of selling, with splitting payments into monthly installments and stuff, are somewhat to blame. But also it's our bad money habits, I think, are to blame as well. And sometimes we're not at fault because sometimes we learn that growing up. But I think that acknowledging that maybe I'm not that good, maybe I'm not that smart yet, maybe I'm not that productive with my money. How can I become more productive? What does that look like? How could I spend my resources so that I can generate more resources? Or how could I spend more resources to have more time? I used to be a traditional accountant. I would go for the volume. I would want to build a business. I was running it. I wasn't going to hire anyone and had all these stupid idea that I was thinking. And now we are very specific with the type of clients we take on. That's productivity. We are also very specific of who we don't want to work with. We don't want to work with clients who are in what's called a victim mindset, who think that the world owes them, that they are owed something, that something happened to them, instead of turning their experiences into their assets. And that, I think, to me, is also financial productivity. Yes, we grow slower, but we only get to work with people who take responsibility for their lives and their business, who admit when they make mistakes, who are not afraid. And for me to change that strategy was quite a journey. But I talked to this one woman and she completely changed my mind about it. I was talking to her and she was like, I just recently had a client who the filing deadline for businesses was Monday, and they came to me or texted me on a Friday night saying, we need help. We owe $100,000. What can you do? And she was like, I spent Saturday looking at their stuff, creating a strategy, meeting with them. And then I spent Sunday preparing and finishing their taxes. And I filed on Monday. So I was able to save them $100,000 and they paid me nicely for it. I know I helped them, but who will help me get the weekend with my daughter back? And it just hit me on the head. I was like, I would rather not work, not get the money, than get paid less than what I think I'm worth.
I once heard Dave Ramsey say, we no longer ask how much, we ask how much down and how much per month. And I'm 59, and I remember distinctly, I was an adult when it happened, when the conversation went from how much is this widget to how much down and how much per month. So that is something you've probably seen that as well, that transition, because it's not just in our personal lives. I see a lot in business, like I just mentioned. People want to buy the latest, like I've got a MacBook Pro with an M1 chip in it, the MacBook Pro with the M3 chips out. I don't need it because there's nothing wrong with my Mac. I got an iPhone 13 Pro Max. The iPhone 16 Pro Max is out. There's nothing wrong with my iPhone 13 Pro Max. I used to be one of these people, always bought the new thing every year. But then I stopped and my wife and I were talking. It's not broken. It works just fine. But it's so addicting to go, I want the latest car. I want the latest Ninja. I want the latest TV. I want the latest iPhone. But you're just spending money, which I believe you're spending money foolishly, because if there's nothing wrong, now, if you got an iPhone 6, maybe upgrade. But if you got an iPhone 13, iPhone 14, you really need to upgrade.
I don't know if you know this or realize why this happens, this shiny object mentality. I have a theory about it. Again, not a scientist, don't know statistical analysis on this, but I do have a theory about why this happens. I read this book maybe a year and a half ago called The Molecule of More. It talks about dopamine and how with every impulse purchase, with every gadget, with every new shiny thing, we get this infusion of dopamine and we get addicted to it. It's addictive. But the reality is, and this is something in the US, it's slightly different from where I grew up. The personal side of things, business is personal. The personal side of things, I think, is to blame. Women had to fight for their rights till 60s or 70s. And then when they got those rights, the right to work, the right, to open bank account, to vote and stuff like that, when they got those rights, they dove into working and they stopped really raising their kids. And so now we have a generation of people who are raised by nannies full time, not just for a few hours a day to make it easier for you, but we are being brainwashed that when you give birth, nothing should change. What do you mean nothing should change? You brought a new life into this world. Do you want to miss the first tooth, the first smile, the first walk? Is a career really that more important? If it is, it's certainly a choice, but I see a generation of people growing up without a real connection with that emptiness inside. And every purchase, every dopamine infusion in their blood comes back to trying to fill that void that just can't be filled with that. I grew up in the Soviet Union, and even though economically it's not a great policy, but socially, every mother has 3 years of maternity leave paid either by the government.
Did you say 3 years?
3 years. And there's no such thing, except for maybe very poor areas where, like, my dad grew up. He definitely had the same mindset of living today and today only, not thinking about tomorrow at all, getting that next new thing or trip or whatever, spending all the money you have today because it might be taken away tomorrow. But he's more of an exception. He grew up very poor. But people who grew up in bigger towns and cities, they don't have that mindset. Their mindset is time with family, enjoying life, working meaningfully, and making enough to have a good lifestyle today, but also slowly set up your dignified retirement. And that's my theory about the shiny objects, the upgrades, all of those things.
Just out of curiosity, how old were you when you came to the United States?
I was 19.
Okay. So you spent a good chunk of your younger years in the Soviet Union. What part of the Soviet Union?
I grew up in Belarus, so you probably know it's right next to Poland.
Yeah, Gary Vee came from Belarus, which reminds me of a story I heard him say. If you know anything about Gary Vaynerchuk, he's about happiness. He said it multiple times on podcasts and video. He goes, I know people who make $50,000 a year. They're home every day at 5 o'clock, get to go to all the kids' recitals and ball games, and they're happy. And he goes, I also know people who make $50 million a year who are miserable because they're working all the time. And so I think you need to figure out what makes you happy. Now, I would love to be filthy rich, but if I don't become filthy rich, I can tell you right now, I'm not filthy rich, but I'm happy. I wake up every morning and I journal every morning. And one of the questions I ask myself, I journal, it says, what is one thing I'm excited about? And I always write the same thing, today, because I woke up today. I'm excited that I got to have a chance to talk to you on the show today. And I think people need to be happy without toys, without a lot of money. You need to figure out what makes you happy. I shared earlier, what makes me happy is watching my team, Man City, play football, European football. That makes me happy. Now, I don't get paid to watch football, but it makes me happy. And I can tell you, happy people are productive people. I want to ask you something. You mentioned your friend who helped that business save $100,000. And then she said, saved them $100,000 and they paid her well, but I can't get that time back. And I've got this philosophy. If you want to hire me on a weekend, Saturday, Sunday, if you want to hire me on Christmas morning, I make a judgment call because my wife and I are empty nesters. We just have little dogs. They don't care what day of the week it is, as long as you give them love. So if you say, I want a 3-hour coaching call with me on Christmas morning, I talk to my wife and say, yeah, you'll pay a premium for it. You'll pay a boatload of money. Or I may say no. Because like your friend, I may say, no, I'm going to spend Christmas morning with my wife. Now, we do this thing in our house, just her and I. We do Christmas on Christmas Eve. That's our tradition. But you have a choice to make. And your friend felt like the right thing to do was to help this business out. But then after she bailed him out, now I didn't get to see my daughter the whole weekend. And I think we need to make a decision as we're going through life. Do I give my time that weekend to my daughter, or do I help this business? And I don't think there's any checklist you can go through and go, if A is B and C is D, then the answer is J. You have to make a decision in the moment. She could have said, no, I'm sorry. It's not my fault. I didn't get myself into this predicament. But she didn't do that. So I think everyone's got to make that judgment call when that situation comes up.
No, she didn't make that call, but she was telling me that so that I don't make the same mistake. I think there was a little bit of regret in her voice about not doing that, or maybe not asking for even more money for it. And I get
But did she have to help that person? Could she have said, sorry, you waited? Okay.
People wait till the last minute because they think the deadline is April 15th. When I start working with new clients, I tell them, don't expect us to work until April 15th. We're going to get your stuff done in February. And so typically we set things up so that we don't even have to ask them for a lot of stuff. We have access to everything and we can download and get our work done. But my favorite thing to do at least a couple of times a week.
Share with us.
It's to do nothing.
What?
Veg out.
No.
Veg out. TV, no TV, food, no food, do nothing. And I think it's such an important part of our lives that we forget. We think that when we do nothing, we are not productive, but actually batteries need to be recharged. Cups need to be refilled.
Preach it. I've been saying this on this show for a long time. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do is absolutely nothing. Or maybe you binge watch Friends on Netflix or something like that. People don't think that's being productive, but to your brain, it may just well be the thing you need.
No, people don't understand when I say that I don't want to talk about work stuff, friends and whatever after 5 o'clock, because I just want to think about something else. I don't want to think about work again. I want to not think about anything. I want to cook some food and maybe veg out or watch TV, like you said.
I can promise you, when I'm watching Man City play football, I'm not thinking, "What's my next podcast going to be about? What should I create?" I'm focused on what's happening on the pitch. That's all I care about that time. I'm known as Mr. Productivity, but I'm not thinking about how to be productive 24/7. Sometimes I just want to hang out with my wife. Sometimes we'll play chess, and my wife creams me all the time on chess. But I'm not thinking about, geez, I wonder how I can be more productive. I'm just enjoying time with my wife. So I think that people need to hear what you just said, and I'm going to repeat it. Sometimes doing nothing or just watching YouTube or watching Netflix or Hulu is being productive. You don't have to be working in order to be productive.
100%. And something I learned recently, fairly recently, that all our lives, because we are social human beings, we have to communicate with other people. They've done experiments, or whatever, psychologists did some experiments, and they found that if a person is left alone with no communications with anyone, with nothing, they go crazy probably in 3 or 4 days. And so because we're social people, life isn't about stuff, Starbucks, or anything else. It's actually all about relationships and how you build those relationships. And people who grow personally learn how to build those relationships. And if the relationship matters to you, and that covers a relationship with yourself and with your spouse and with your family, whatever that means to you, it requires both people, or whatever, 4 people, 5 people, whatever the family is, it requires everyone to invest time. And sometimes, a lot of times, that time is doing nothing together.
I can't add anything to that because I want people to understand this is a productivity podcast, but you don't have to be doing something to be productive. So before we wrap up, before I ask you where people can go to find out more about you and about your book and all that, any final thoughts you want to leave the listener?
Happiness isn't something you can find. It's something you create. Everything else is secondary. But happiness spreads that energy to everyone else around you. Like, you look at your journal and you write down what you're excited about. When you start a day with something like that, also creates the energy flow from you to the next person you encounter, to the next person you interview, to the next dog or cat that you pet. That energy is what really life is all about, in my opinion.
That is a great way to end the episode, because the reality is we get one life, and I choose to wake up every day and to have great expectation for the day. And the best analogy I can give is I used to wake up as a little child on Christmas morning, couldn't wait to see what Santa Claus brought me. I wake up that way every day now. Unfortunately, there's no presents under the Christmas tree, which would be really rocking cool if that happened. But even on days where I don't sleep well, like the day we're recording this last night, I lost 3 hours of sleep last night because of something stupid I did. But I still woke up at 5:15 and got on with my day. Now, today wasn't the greatest morning because I was tired. I didn't get enough sleep, but I'm thankful I had another day. I'm thankful I got to have this conversation with you. I choose to identify as Tigger from Winnie the Pooh, and I choose to look at the world with positivity and kindness and joy, because I can tell you that makes you more productive. If you're a curmudgeon like Scrooge from Christmas Carol, you're not really productive because you got all the stuff going on in your head. So I want to thank you for sharing everything you did with us on the show today. So where can people go to find out more about what you're doing in the world and your book and all that kind of good stuff?
I think the couple of best places are my Instagram. I'm very active. My LinkedIn, again, very active, to media that I love. And then my website, TatianaTsoir.com, or like a quick shortcut, talktotatiana.com, takes you right to my website. And then my book is, of course, on Amazon.
Nice. This is a pop quiz for you, because I bet you didn't go to my about page on my website, MrProductivity.com. What do you think my favorite social media platform is? I did say it in passing earlier in the episode. Nope.
You said you're on LinkedIn.
No, I said I use LinkedIn because that's where my people is. It's not my favorite platform. You'll never guess it, but I'm just going to see if you want to take another stab at it. Starts with an S. She's going S.
Hold on. I'm trying to think. Do I even use that? I don't think so. Starts with an S. There's Facebook, there's TikTok, there's Snapchat.
Oh, there you go. So I don't get any business from Snapchat, but I have a lot of people I snap with every day. One's a CPA, one's a database administrator. So we're not talking kids. These are all college educated people. I just love the DMs on Snapchat, and it's so much fun. Snapchat is known for their snap streak. So if you snap someone every day, my CPA is like almost up to 2 years now. It's just fun. And I think, again, this goes back where we were talking earlier. Life can't always be about business. So I use Snapchat as a outlet for me and my more creative behind the scenes side. Unfortunately, I'm not Mr. Productivity on Snapchat, not enough characters, but I am Mark Stuczewski. If you can find it, good luck. But I just wanted to throw it out to you. So again, go to Tatiana's website. This is a great conversation. And one of the things I love about AI is I hated coming up with titles of the episode. I don't have to do that anymore. I just throw the transcript in the AI and it comes up with a great title. I don't know what it's going to come up with, but go to your website. And after you go to her website, head on over to mine, MrProductivity.com, MISTER, MrProductivity.com. Tatiana, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was an absolute delight to have you here.
Thank you, Mark.